What's up, folks? This is the Leafs Convo podcast. My name is Norman James. It is a pleasure to be with you again. It's been forever, but we are back in business. Sunday spectacular styles. Mike Augello's waiting to go, and I know you want to hear some Leafs talk, so let's do it. The Leafs Convo starts now. The Leafs Convo is brought to you by Vanguard Northeast Realty. With over 15 years' experience, Vanguard provides superior level of service for commercial real estate tenants and owners. For more information, visit vanguardne.ca. And here we go. My podcast partner in crime joins us, the one and only Michael P. Augello. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Norman. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. How are you doing?
Not too bad. It's Happy Sunday Spectacular. The Leafs losing in Detroit on Friday, picking up a win over Pittsburgh in Toronto on Saturday. Not the greatest hockey we've ever seen, but they got 3 out of 4 points available, and they have a real test going forward, Mike.
Well, yeah, I mean, the NHL scheduling gods didn't exactly do the Leafs and many of these teams any favors. They come out of a 9-day break and play 4 games in 6 nights, so it's not the best thing. But and you could see the rust that. I mean, you were at the game in Detroit on Friday, and I mean, it was probably one of their worst performances of the year, simply because puck was bouncing. They only got 21 shots on Jimmy Howard. It was just sort of, they were just out of sorts. They couldn't corral the puck. They couldn't create offensive chances, and yet, they got a couple good plays with Marleau and Matthews, and that was enough to tie the game. And then they lose on the Kaiser goal. But they get 3 or 4 points of the first 2 games, and I don't think anybody is scoffing at that.
It's interesting. We've seen this happen before. The Leafs lose to an inferior opponent on the Friday, then take on a team that is good or perhaps better than them historically the next day and win. Is this a situation where the Leafs are playing to the level of the competition, Mike?
I think it's more centered on Detroit because I believe they've played them 3 times and all 3 games have gone to overtime. In the one game, they were down 4-1, came back. And I think the other one was 5-4. And this one was, they came back late after that goal from Larkin, and then Marleau scores the goal off the shaft of his stick. I think it's more centered on Detroit. Detroit, they're not a good team, but they work themselves up for their division rival. But I think on Friday it was mostly rust. It was just getting used to a new teammate in Jake Muzzin. You could see Babcock. I'm sure you noticed that the defensive pairings it was in a mix master for the entire game. It's like one shift he was using Riley and Muzzin, the next shift he's using Muzzin and Hainsey. It's like they just constantly changed them. I think he was looking for combinations that would work. But it was not a good game, but a lot of teams coming out of that break were having a tough time.
I noticed on social media fans losing their minds over Mike Babcock and his experimentation with the lines and the defensive pairings. Can you explain why he's doing that?
Well, I know that yesterday the people who thought that this was a winning combo, that they were going to keep Matthews and Marner together, I mean, they were lying to themselves because Babcock was sending signals even when he decided he was going to move them together, that it was a temporary thing. He moved Matthews and Marner together to get Matthews jump-started because Marner is, and the funny thing is like Matthews had a goal and an assist on Friday, and Marner didn't have any points in that game. He knows that the winning combo for Marner is him and Tavares. They've worked great together all year. He just simply moved Marner to Matthews' line to get Matthews jump-started. Now he scored 3 goals in 3 straight games, and now he's going, so now he can move Marner back to Tavares. I mean, he's going to do that. He's not going to put those 2 guys together. It's putting all your eggs in one basket, but in opposed to some of the other line changes, he's gonna do that because he's done that all year. And the defensive pairings, it's because of Muzzin, and they're gonna find where there is a comfort level before February 25th to see if they need to address even more defensive problems, because I still think their defense is okay. It's much better with Muzzin being added, but it's not great. So I think there's still a move or 2 to be made.
Is there an urgency in this application of change for the head coach, Mike?
Yeah, I think there's a bit. I mean, let's just say they don't have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to the playoff situation. But I think that Babcock needs to know what he has on hand. With Muzzin, mixed in, and you can see already, why they got him. He's a big physical guy who likes to hit, and he's not bad offensively. The analytics crowd is happy because his puck possession numbers are great, and he breaks up cycles. So I mean, he satisfies every aspect, and he's played fairly well in 2 games. So you add that to the combo with Riley. You see if Riley can play the right side, which he has in the past with Muzzin, or do they move things around? I think right now it's experimentation time for Babcock, and I think he'll keep doing it until he finds something he's comfortable with. Then he'll stick with it. But like I said, I think they're also doing that to see, okay, what can we address? What can we upgrade before the deadline that doesn't cost us a ton? And then, he says to Kyle Dubas, this is what I think we need, and, go to work.
The Leafs have to go to work, Mike. The standings right now, a lot more crowded around the Maple Leafs than I was anticipating they would be at this point. Do you think that the Leafs have another gear here, and that when 82 games are complete, the blue and white will have pulled away from most teams? The New York Islanders are a point ahead of the Maple Leafs, and both have played 51 games.
Well, and I mean, if they were battling for a wild card spot, that would mean something, but it's meaningless in the sense that the Islanders are in the Metro, and the highest they can finish is first in the Metro, and the Leafs are not going to finish first in the Atlantic because Tampa Bay is the best team in the NHL. I mean, right now the goal of this team is to finish in second place and get home ice advantage in the first round. Montreal, Montreal's been a good story in terms of for their fans, because Max Domi has scored like crazy, much better than anybody expected, and they got Weber back, and prices seem to straighten out after, I think, a rough first half. But again, their general manager has come out and said he's not going to add players at the deadline. I'd like to see him say that again in front of the passionate Montreal fans, because if they smell the playoffs, they're going to want him to make some moves. Boston is going to make a move. The Islanders will probably make a move. So that's why I think it may be incumbent upon Kyle Dubas to continue to improve this team. But it's going to be very close. I mean, right now between the Leafs and 10th place, it's 9 points. Now 9 points is pretty damn big, especially in the possibility of 3-point games in the NHL. But it's not impossible if you lose a bunch of games in regulation, which they've done in the past. So they can't go to sleep on this. But I think Kyle Dubas is going to be aware of what his main competitors are going to do in this league leading up to February 25th. That's why he's probably going to have to make another tweaking, or maybe a couple tweaking moves. But I think there's another gear. I do. And I think, again, William Nylander is not playing like he can. Matthews had his slump. Not everybody is operating on all 8 cylinders. And I think that eventually that'll happen.
The big question is, why aren't the Leafs better? You've gone through some of the reasons why they've gone through the slumps they've endured over the last little while, the individual issues that have multiplied and caused the Leafs to have their difficulties. This team should be at least 5 to 8 points better than it is.
Well, I mean, the Islanders, and I'll just say this quickly. I mean, Barry Trotz has had a great effect on that team. They're playing a defensive system that they've never played before. If Barry Trotz had gone to the Islanders last year, John Tavares may have not left, because they would have had some idea of what was going on. They're getting great goaltending out of Robin Leonard. Their defense is playing well. They're getting balanced scoring. They're not perfect, and right now they've been on a hot streak, and the Leafs are coming out of a rough patch. So that's the reason why they're a point ahead. I think if you ask Mike Babcock the reason why the Leafs are where they are right now in terms of not reaching the expectations that some people had for them, I think he'd say it's the power play. The power play has been really bad over the last, I would say, month and a half. Not consistent. They've got all these weapons, but teams have devised a way to shut them down. Again, if you saw yesterday against Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh penalty killing group, they collapse down, they spread out onto the half boards where Matthews and Marner are. They force them to make those cross ice passes earlier than they want, or through four bodies. They don't have a big point shot in Morgan Rielly, although he's a really great offensive mind in terms of passing and creating offensive plays. But when you don't have a big booming shot from the point, they can collapse down on your forwards, and then it's basically a 4-on-4 with your defenseman looking for an opening. So they have to devise a way to have some success on the power play with all that firepower, or maybe shake up the power play. And I've been of the opinion that Matthews, Marner, Kadri, Tavares, all on the one power play is not a great idea. I think you need somebody in front of the net creating a havoc. I know Kadri can do that sometimes, but you may need a different chemistry on that power play for it to be more effective.
This is the Leafs Combo. Norman James with Mike Augello. The power play, obviously, something that the Leafs really need to revitalize in order to make strides. 13th in the league with all of that weaponry, Mike. Considering their glut of forwards and just how much talent they have, do the Leafs need a different look at forward? Do they need perhaps a forward to be brought in via trade? Somebody different, somebody with a different skill set, a different mindset to come in and maybe give this forward group a jolt? Or do you think it's all in front of our eyes right now and it's just a matter of mixing and matching and finding the right combination?
I think eventually the power play will get online, but I noticed something, and Ray Ferraro, who's very observant of in-game situations, said something on Friday that he spoke to what I've had a problem with for a while, and that was when Jakob de la Rose from the Red Wings went to the net, crashed the net. And I can't remember who the defenseman was. I think it was Travis Dermott, and he went right at Frederik Andersen and knocked Andersen down. And there was no anything in terms of a response for de la Rose. He got the penalty for goaltender interference. And when you're, to use Mike Babcock's, phrase, well, our power play is our intimidation or our muscle or whatever, and when your power play is not scoring, you allow the team to take more liberties, I think. And when you look at the fourth line and how ineffective it has been, I didn't think over the weekend that Gauthier and Lindholm were particularly good.
Lindholm's great without his stick, though. He was fantastic there. Was it in the second period? He's running around like a soccer player.
Yeah,
pretty great. Hey, Mike Babcock's comment about the power play being the team's toughness hasn't aged well.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I am not advocating going out and getting a knuckle dragging Neanderthal like Zach Kassian or somebody like that who is single minded in his purpose. But Jake Muzzin is not a fighter enforcer, but he hits and he'll stick up for his teammates. And I think the Leafs need somebody on that fourth line that, could provide that. Not somebody who's just a, 5-minute energy forward, somebody who would actually play, 9 to 10 minutes like the fourth line does. Now, the internal option for that is probably gone, because I saw a report from one of the Marley reporters that Mason Marchment is out 2 to 3 months with an upper body injury. So him being called up is not an option. I think you can get that kind of player before the deadline for a relatively inexpensive price, somebody who can provide some energy and a little bit of pushback on the fourth line. Maybe even somebody like I've heard Patrick Maroon's name, who could play higher up in the lineup as a bigger forward with a skilled center like a Kadri or a Tavares or somebody like that. So I think that's where the Leafs need to address, because when they play Boston, when they play Montreal, when they play anybody in the playoffs, that team will, if they have physicality, will try to impose that on the Leafs.
Yeah, no question. Don Cherry during Hockey Night in Canada, say what you will about Don. I mean, he's a bit of a fossil, but he's a legend. He understands the game from a certain point of view, highlighting the physical aspects of Boston, and of Winnipeg, man, that Winnipeg team's a lot of fun. And how they stick up for each other. They help each other out. I mean, they're not afraid to get physical or mix it up or scrum or even throw fists with the opposition. And I understand a lot of people hate that aspect of the game, but would you rather disregard that and not win a cup, or have that and win a Stanley Cup? Because I think you're better to have that, and your chances of going all the way with physicality and with the ability to push back put you in a better position to get to where you want to go. This is the Leafs Combo for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Toronto. I'm Norman James with Mike Augello. Mike, what do the Maple Leafs lack that all of the past recent Stanley Cup winners had?
I mean, right now, I mean, the one thing I think besides that aspect we just talked about, I mean, I think they could use another forward like that. I think they're still going to be looking for a right-hand shot defenseman before the deadline, but not somebody who's going to cost them anybody off the roster. I think it's going to be like a Roman Polak type of situation if he's available with Dallas, or somebody of that ilk. I really think that the only thing that's not proven right now with this team is, other than Mitch Marner, who had a great year had a great series in that 7-game series against the Bruins, it's the young guys that make up the core group of this team, proving that they can show the players that they are when it counts in the playoffs. Matthews played well against Washington 2 years ago, did not play well against the Bruins last year. Nylander has not played well in both playoff series. And Freddie Anderson, who's a veteran, I mean, he played really good in the games in Toronto and one of the games in Boston, but he had to make some saves in Game 7 against the Bruins. I think that what they need to prove is that they can show up when it counts. And again, if they play the Bruins, there's also the mental aspect of getting over a team that they probably should have beaten and didn't, and a team that I think intimidates them in their minds. Whereas if they play a Montreal or somebody else, then I think that's less of a concern. But then, I think if they play Montreal, they'll win. If they play Boston, I don't know.
I'm not sure, Mike. I'm not sure they beat anybody in the playoffs the way they've performed over the last little while. And that's not suggesting they can't beat anyone. I think they can beat any team, but they haven't shown me, and I'm sure they haven't shown most fans, just how good they can be. And the question now, the curiosity revolves around how this team is going to pull itself out of this average run that it's on. And when does it emerge as the team that we all thought it was and believe it can be at some point? And is it a process that is solved internally, or is there another addition needed to be made to this current group to really ignite it?
I think it partially can be solved internally. I mean, if you ask me, the best combination currently, if the Leafs don't add anybody at forward before the deadline, with the best combination for the fourth line that would make them usable and less of a liability going into the playoffs, I would say it'd probably be Trevor Moore between Par Lindholm and maybe Tyler Ennis, because there'd be energy, there'd be speed. Teams would have to worry about, Moore's got really good speed. Ennis does as well. Lindholm, I think he's not a big scorer, but he's good on the penalty kill, and I think he's a better center than he is a winger. I don't see any role on this team in the playoffs for Freddie Gauthier. I'm not trying to be mean to the guy. I just don't think, going up against somebody from the Bruins, or he's got to use his physicality to his advantage, and he fails to really do that on most nights. So if he can't do that and he can't provide that, then I think that they need to look at a different direction when it comes to the fourth line. On defense, it's, right now they have 5 lefties. That's a big deal to Babcock. Mm-hmm. He said after the Muzzin trade, we'll work with what we got. And then that wasn't insulting Muzzin, but it's basically he likes left, right for his defensive pairings, because when you're on the backhand, you can't make strong cross ice passes or get it out of the zone. It's easier to do it on the forehand. That's his belief. Again, that's Dubas shied away from deals apparently that included a Janssen or a Kapanen or a Rasmus Sandin because if we're a right-hand shot defenseman, because he wants to keep those players.
Sure.
I get that. So, but still, it doesn't eliminate the need for a right-hand shot defenseman. And if he can find one that's less expensive and can fit under the cap situation, then that's what I think he'll try to do.
This is the Leafs Combo for Vanguard Northeast Realty Corp. I'm Norman James with Mike Jello. Bringing in Jake Muzzin for Carl Grundstrom, Sean Dursey, and a first-round pick is one thing, but if you're going to move out Kasperi Kapanen or Andreas Janssen or Rasmus Sandin or Timothy Liljegren, that to me suggests a deal over the top with an expectation of taking a major run at a Stanley Cup. Do you think we have yet to see that deal and perhaps we could see it before the trade deadline, Mike? Or do you think that's the kind of deal that will be made next season?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The thing is that I think it's less likely we see that deal before the deadline unless an opportunity really opens up. I mean, one thing Elliot Friedman reported in his 31 Thoughts column, and I was a little dumbfounded by it, that there was talk between the Leafs and the Blues for an Alex Pietrangelo, and apparently the price would have been, as part of that deal would have been Nylander, and the Leafs didn't want to make that. Now, I think that that story will change if they lose in the first round again. I think they will make a move like that, And now the thing is, Pietrangelo has a year left in his contract. There's no guarantee that they'd be able to afford to re-sign him. And then you have both Muzzin and Pietrangelo expiring contracts. I think they can get Muzzin re-signed. I think that they pay him a little more than he's making right now at $4 million and give him term that they can re-sign him. They can't get Gardner re-signed, and that's why I think maybe they shied away from a Pietrangelo deal, because he'd probably be a lengthy rental, and that would be it. But I'll tell you right now, if there's an opportunity to get a defenseman out there that they think can play in the top four, you might have to consider trading Jake Gardner before February 25th. I mean, he's a rental. You can probably get back a package pretty close to what you traded for Muzzin. And, I mean, honestly, I see no way he comes back. So,
But we've made that clear, Mike.
But right now it's like, okay, it sort of undoes the Muzzin deal in the sense of you just made a deal to improve your top four, and then you're trading one of your top four. The only way it makes sense is if you're getting another defenseman in your top four, and I don't think that they can pull off two of those deals in a month.
Well, you're changing the strategy too. Jake Gardner, he's weighted offensively as a defensive player, so he's a defenseman, but
he's an offenseman. He's a rover. He's not a defenseman.
Yeah, offenseman. I like that. Are you willing to implement that kind of change at this point of the season with as much on the line as you have? I like the idea of keeping Jake Gardner in the fold and letting him ride or die with the guy. Now, let me bring up William Nylander. This guy better have a good playoff series or two or three. If he's gone, if he falls asleep in the playoffs, that's just not good for him, for the organization. They need him. They need everybody, but in particular William Nylander, a guy who really hasn't shone in the playoffs and needs to, especially if his season leaves a lot to be desired. If he can kickstart it in the playoffs, that's good for him. That's good for the Leafs. Good for a potential trading partner. But if he's not there and he can't take his game to a level where he's an impact player, this is going to be a real difficult situation.
You're right on all points when it comes to Nylander in terms of the playoffs. I mean, if the Leafs' goal is to keep him, then they need him to show up and be an effective secondary offensive contributor, taking some of the heat off of Marner and Matthews and Tavares. If the goal is to trade him in the summer, then they want him to play well so they can increase his value, so his value is increased and teams will want him more. I think teams will want him even if he has a bad playoff. It's 1 year, and people realize that when you sit out training camp and 2 months of the season, you're probably not going to get back into the swing of things. So I think his value is there no matter what he does, but best case scenario, he shows up in the playoffs. He starts playing, well from now until the end of the season. I mean, you've seen signs that he's starting to kick it in with that 3-assist game against Caps. But I think they were saying yesterday, and I agree with it, the worst time that he could have a 10-day break was right after that game. He probably wants to keep playing, and now he sort of has to find himself again. So, I mean, I think the Leafs have bigger worries than Nylander, but eventually they're going to need him to be William Nylander. And if he's not, then that's one less weapon they have.
What exactly is William Nylander? He's not the focal point. He's a contributor. He's a guy who can help bring you to another level. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he is not the focal point. The focal point of this team should be Auston Matthews, but really it's Mitch Marner and John Tavares. These are the guys who've carried the weight the entire season. And when a player's not playing well or needs a kickstart, they group him with Marner or Tavares. And it's funny, Tavares now seems like he's been snake bitten just a little bit. 30 goals, he's been on 30 goals for a while now, and I don't know if 50 is going to be in the cards because he'd need, 20 in the next 30 games or so. I'm not so sure the way the team is constituted right now, and even with additions or subtractions, this team really has what it takes yet to drive forward and win playoff rounds and win a Stanley Cup. I don't know what it is, Mike. The talent on paper is there, and these guys have shown, especially at the beginning of the season, have shown that they can dominate. But just recently, it seems like everybody's catching up with them, and it's a matter of now of taking that talent and finding, what else they have internally to separate themselves even more.
Yeah, the way that they've played lately has opened the door for doubt to creep in, and you can't just ignore that. I think there are signs of certain players playing better in different positions. Like I'm encouraged with the fact that Connor Brown, they moved him to left wing. They play him with Kadri and Nylander. I think Brown has played really well lately, and I know a lot of people that said Connor Brown's the guy you got to trade to clear cap space for next year. Again, you replace him with somebody from the Marlies, the savings is $1 million. It's not a lot. I mean, right now. So, I mean, that's the guy that, I don't see solutions in moving out Connor Browns or Zach Hymans. With this team, you need your big players to play like big players. Right now, Matthews is after a stretch of 7 or 8 games that he didn't. And right now, Tavares, after carrying this team for a while, he's having a downturn. What they need out of William Nylander is for him to be a 40-assist guy like he was in his first 2 years, to be a complementary player to help Auston Matthews score goals like Marner helps Tavares score goals. That's it. They don't need him to be the superstar that makes a Gilbert Perreault rush from behind the net all the way through 5 guys and score a goal. They just need him to play the way he's played in his first 2 years.
Absolutely. Any last thoughts? Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl?
I never pick against Tom Brady and the Patriots. I'm not a particular fan of the team, but I do respect the fact that they've been in 9 Super Bowls. I mean, the Rams are good, so the Rams could win the game. But if I think the spread is 2.5. I think the Patriots will find a way to win. This might be the swan song of Belichick and Brady. So I think the Patriots will win. The funny thing is, if the Patriots lose, Tom Brady will have lost as many Super Bowls as Jim Kelly, but he's won 5. Yeah. That's the difference.
Was Bill Belichick not the head coach of the Cleveland Browns at one time?
Yeah, that was his first head coaching job after being an assistant with Parcells in New England and the Jets and the Giants.
Was that the 90s or the 80s? Because the mid 80s,
90s.
Yeah, but Cleveland was okay. It was 86. They went to the AFC final or something like that. It was pretty crazy. But yeah. Belichick, can you imagine being a part of the Cleveland Browns, looking in the mirror and thinking to himself, what the hell am I doing? Where am I going? Are things ever going to get better?
Well, this is the interesting thing. I heard an interview where somebody was talking about Belichick. Belichick was on the verge of possibly being fired by the Patriots before Drew Bledsoe got hurt and was replaced by Brady. So, I mean, if that wouldn't have happened, who knows whether he would be the legend that he is right now. And, Brady would have gotten the opportunity. I think eventually he would have, but that injury to Bledsoe, I think it was in Pittsburgh, that particular year. I mean, that put the Patriots on a track to be the best football franchise for a long span in the history of the NFL.
Drew Bledsoe, one of the all-time great Buffalo Bills.
Oh, yes.
Michael, enjoy the Super Bowl. Thanks for your insight. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Norman.
We would like to thank Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough, title sponsor of the Leafs Convo, demonstrating passion for the industry and a superior level of excellence in selling, leasing, and marketing your property. Vanguard Northeast Realty. That is it for the Sunday Spectac. What did you think? At Norman James TLC, at Mike in Buffalo, or you can get at us inside the comments section. Enjoy the Super Bowl. We'll talk to you soon. The Leafs Convo is out.